Hello everybody and welcome back to another not applicable Formula 1 video. I hope that you are well. We are getting to the end of the summer break. We're edging ever closer to Belgium and I thought this would be a great opportunity to have a little look back over these last 11 races that we've had so far and also my predictions for the 2022 lineup and give a little bit of an update on what I think the grid will look like in 2022. There's been a lot of changes over these 11 races. We've seen contracts given to drivers. We've seen drivers looking like they might be on their way out. We've seen drivers hint towards other teams that they might be in, but I figured it was about the right time of the season to think about what the grid is going to look like in 2022 and give you my predictions on who will be where in 2022. As we are only 12 races away from the end of the season, we are halfway through this season. Let's jump straight into it with the teams that I don't think are going to change their driver lineup. Ferrari would be absolutely crazy, in my opinion, if they decided to get rid of either one of these two drivers. I think they have been phenomenal this season. Leclerc and Sainz have been wonderful. Both of them have got podiums. They've just been excellent in that Ferrari car. If we look at the Constructors' Championship, they are third. Yes, they're on joint points with McLaren, but they're looking good, and both drivers have had good races, bad races. But I think in the second half of the season, we could see Ferrari be a bit of a surprise package. It would not surprise me if either one of these drivers gets a win in the last 12 races of the season. Again, as I said, Ferrari would be crazy to change anything in this team. I also think that McLaren are going to keep the same driver lineup. I think Daniel Ricciardo hasn't been great, but I think he's been good enough to warrant keeping his seat. And I think in the second half of the season, when he gets to grips with that car a little bit more, I've seen a few videos on the McLaren car, and it does seem like an absolute dog to try and get used to. And we've seen that with Daniel Ricciardo. He's struggling a little bit more than I thought he was going to, but nothing crazy. And I don't think McLaren are going to do anything untoward with his contract. I don't think they're going to get rid of him and replace him moving into 2022. And of course, Lando Norris, his brand new contract came through, what was it, just before Monaco? And he's been electric all throughout this season. Absolutely phenomenal. They would be insane to get rid of him at McLaren. And if anything, other teams should be looking at Lando Norris thinking, can we bring him in as our number one driver? If we want to fight for a title, is Lando Norris maybe the man we look to? So I think McLaren needs to keep hold of Lando Norris more than anything that they do over the course of the next second half of the season. Aston Martin, I think they've got it spot on this season. I was a little bit hesitant about Vettel at the beginning of the season. Didn't know whether he would bounce back from obviously the turmoil that he had at Ferrari. He really didn't have a nice time there last season, but he has bounced back. It took him a few races to get used to the Aston Martin car, but since that, we've seen him on the podium in Baku. We saw him on the podium again in Hungary. Yes, it was taken away, but he's shown that he's got that race pace. He's shown that he can get consistent points in that Aston Martin, and he has been more than good enough to warrant his place in Formula 1. Lance Stroll, again, I don't think that Aston Martin will make any changes. I think Stroll will stay there for the long haul as well. Red Bull, I think we'll keep the same driver lineup. Lots of sort of rumours about Perez, whether he's good enough, whether he'll stay, whether Red Bull will maybe go for Gasly or bring through a Vips or someone like that, or an Albon back to the team. But I think personally they'll stick with Verstappen and Perez. I think they're a good enough lineup. Yes, Perez isn't pushing Verstappen. You know, Verstappen is by far and away the best of these two drivers. Again, if we look at the Drivers' and Constructors' Championship, Verstappen over 80 points ahead of Perez at this point. You know, he's not putting up a fight to be number one driver in the team. But I don't think Red Bull wants someone to do that either. I think they just want someone who can be consistently in the points and pick up points for the Constructors' Championship. Perez is just about doing that, being 4 points behind Bottas. Not too bad at all. And the final team that I think is going to keep it the same, and this is different to what I said at the beginning of the season, I think Alpine actually are just going to keep their driver lineup the same. I said that they might replace Ocon at the beginning of the season, but Ocon hasn't been too bad. Yes, he had a massive dip in the middle of the season. You know, for the first 3 or 4 races, Ocon was doing exceptionally well. Then we had that dip, but since Silverstone got a new chassis, seen in Silverstone, he was pretty good, picked up some points, and then in Hungary managed to get his first win. I don't think that's going to sort of continue on for the rest of the season. I don't think Ocon's going to win another race this season, but I can see him staying at Alpine for the foreseeable future. And of course, Fernando Alonso, similar to Vettel, took a few races to get going, but after Monaco sort of has taken steps forward, and over the past 3 or 4 races, Fernando Alonso has been absolutely amazing. We're looking at Hungary, did incredibly well to defend from Lewis Hamilton. We're looking at the sprint race at Silverstone, did incredibly well to get himself up through the grid during that sprint race. an exceptional driver for Alpine. He's really showing his class again, and I don't think he'll be there for very long, but I do think he will be there for the 2022 season. Now, let's talk about the teams that I think are going to make changes. First of all, the most obvious change that is probably coming to the grid, Mercedes, what are they going to do? Hamilton and Bottas. I think it is going to be Hamilton and George Russell. You know, it seems like the worst kept secret on the Formula One grid this season that George Russell is definitely going to get that Mercedes seat at some point. I personally thought it might have been last year after he had a pretty good showing at Sakir. They gave Valtteri Bottas the benefit of the doubt. You know, Valtteri Bottas is an incredibly good driver. Let's not sort of take away from Valtteri Bottas and his achievements in Formula One. But I do think it's maybe time to move him on and bring George Russell through. George Russell needs experience at the front of the grid. I was talking about this in my rumours video. The fact that Lando Norris, Charles Leclerc, they're getting this experience of fighting for points, of fighting drivers around them. And, you know, they've all got that idea of what it takes to get a podium, what it takes to get a win in Formula One. George Russell hasn't got that experience. And if he doesn't get that experience soon, it's going to be a big step up for him to go to Mercedes. I think it's going to be a big step up next year anyway. But if Lando Norris, Charles Leclerc have got another season being at a big team, and you know, George Russell's going to start to sort of fall by the wayside a little bit, in my opinion. So he needs to make that step up, and I think this year is the time. Let's talk about AlphaTauri, because AlphaTauri have a very good lineup, in my opinion. I love Pierre Gasly. I think he's one of the best drivers on the grid. And again, I think he's been in the top 3 or 4 drivers this season so far in terms of form. And Yuki Tsunoda hasn't quite come to fruition in the same way that people might have thought, but he is a rookie. He's getting there. He hasn't had too many, like, horrendous races. He's had some shockers along the way, but nothing awful from Tsunoda over the course of the season, I wouldn't say. But personally, I think Gasly needs a new challenge. I think Gasly is good enough to be fighting for wins and world championships, and I don't think you're ever going to do that at AlphaTauri. AlphaTauri is a feeder team, and that is all it's ever going to be. You're never going to win races at AlphaTauri consistently. You're never going to be fighting for world championships at AlphaTauri. It's just not the way that that team is designed to be. And therefore, I think Gasly needs to move on. I think he will look up and down the grid and try and find himself a different seat next season. So I think AlphaTauri, Red Bull, they're going to have a little bit of a sort of decision on their hands. How do they replace Gasly? How do they replace the man that is getting them their points? And I think they're going to go for someone who's been in F1 before and is consistently good enough. I think they're going to go for Albon. You know, Albon, I was a bit surprised, didn't get the AlphaTauri seat when they brought Tsunoda through, but maybe they were thinking a little bit later on. You know, Albon has been able to get some 2022 driving experience with Red Bull, and I think coming back into Formula One, it's about the right time for Albon. It's now or never for me. I think if Albon doesn't come back into Formula One next season, maybe they bring through Vips or Lawson, someone like that, it's going to be a real struggle for Albon to get a seat in the future. So Albon back into Formula One for 2022, replacing Gasly in AlphaTauri for me. Alfa Romeo, Kimi Räikkönen and Giovinazzi. For me, neither of them have been great this season. I think we are finally seeing the decline of Kimi Räikkönen. You know, we can still see flashes of brilliance from him, but I don't think it's anywhere near the standards that he was at, 5-10 years ago. He has been in Formula One for what feels like forever. And I think this could be the end for Kimi Räikkönen. I think this could be his final season. I don't think he'll want to, get used to a whole new regulation set in 2022. I think he's more than happy to finish his career at the end of this turbo hybrid era and move on to something else. Giovinazzi, I don't think has been good enough to warrant that Ferrari seat. Looking at Ferrari with Leclerc and Sainz, does Giovinazzi displace either of them within the next 5 years? I don't think so. I don't think Giovinazzi is anywhere near good enough to keep his Ferrari seat within the Alfa Romeo team. And I've heard a little bit from the comments that actually both seats next year at Alfa Romeo will be Ferrari seats. So what I've done is I think if both seats at Alfa Romeo are Ferrari seats, I think they'll use it a bit like AlphaTauri is a junior team to Red Bull. I think Ferrari will start to use Alfa Romeo as a junior team. I think they'll bring through Mick Schumacher. They'll move him from Haas into an Alfa Romeo, get him into a team that's a little bit more like the Ferrari setup. Yes, he is in that Ferrari seat at Haas, kind of, but I think they'll bring him through at Alfa Romeo, get him out of Haas, give him an opportunity at his own team, an Italian team. And then I think that Callum Ilott has been good enough. He's been given opportunities to do testing in Alfa Romeo. You know, he's in and around the team all the time. And I think it's finally the opportunity for him to maybe take that step forward and get into another seat. Both of them being Ferrari juniors, I think they'll start to use that Ferrari team. At the beginning of the season, I said that Kimi Räikkönen might be replaced by Nico Hülkenberg, but now I think that both drivers at Alfa Romeo will get replaced, and I think Mick Schumacher and Callum Ilott are the people to come through, meaning that Mick Schumacher is no longer going to be at Haas. So Haas now have the problem in that they still need to keep hold of Nikita Mazepin. They still need that money coming through. They're still going to need a paid driver. But if Mick Schumacher does move on because of his connections with Ferrari, who do they bring through? And I still think they go for a Ferrari driver academy. You know, they've got the Ferrari engine. And I think they go for Schwartzman. I think, you know, being Russian, he'll bring into that team fairly handedly. Him and Mazepin will obviously both be Russian teammates. And I think he'll bring enough energy to the Haas team. I know that Haas are going for like all guns blazing for 2022, and they've effectively said that this year's car is just not even worth progressing with effectively. But I think even if they try and get hold of an experienced driver to go along with Mazepin, I don't know who in their right mind would want that seat. You know, would Nico Hülkenberg go for it? I don't think so. Would Valtteri Bottas want to go to Haas? I don't think so. So I think Schwartzman's a pretty good pickup. Maybe they could go for somebody else in F2. Maybe they could talk to another team. Maybe they could bring in an Alpine junior. But I've gone for Schwartzman. I think Haas next year could be a little bit of a weird one. If Mick Schumacher does move on, Haas again, I think they're going to be on the phone. Gene and Gunther are going to have to find someone that's going to bring in some money, but also be a good enough driver for the team. So it's going to be a tricky one. Finally, Williams, George Russell and Latifi. Now, George Russell, obviously, I've said, will move to Mercedes. Latifi's a weird one because I don't think Latifi is good enough to warrant his seat on merit. I know that he pays a little bit towards Williams, but they've said for next year, the Williams team have said they no longer need a pay driver in the same way. And I know we're saying this after Latifi literally just got 6 points and George Russell's only on 4, but I think Williams will take this opportunity to finally replace both drivers in their team. I think they'll go for something completely new moving into 2022. I think this is a great opportunity to Williams to just get a driver lineup that is incredibly consistent, incredibly good, and capable of winning races. So I have gone for Bottas and Gasly. If they can pick up these two drivers, I think we're genuinely looking at Williams as being a midfield battling team. I think Bottas could get so much out of this Williams car. He was at there before. He knows so much about how to win races, how to get points, what it takes in Formula One to be right at the top. And Pierre Gasly coming through, he's still young enough where he's still got things to learn and he's still got room to improve, but he's shown that he is absolutely phenomenal behind the wheel of a Formula One car. At AlphaTauri this season and last season, he has been absolutely brilliant. I think he could be a future world champion. Could he be the world champion to bring a world championship back to Williams? Could be. It could be. Maybe I'm dreaming, but that is my lineup for next year. I think personally, you know, Gasly there, 50 points in the Drivers' Championship in the AlphaTauri. Well ahead the rest of the midfield. And, you know, even though they're behind Alpine in the Constructors, I don't think you can really blame Gasly for that. But this is my lineup for next season. Hamilton, Russell, Verstappen, Perez, Leclerc, Sainz, Norris, Ricciardo, Alonso with Ocon still, Albon back in AlphaTauri with Tsunoda, Vettel and Stroll, Gasly and Bottas in a Williams car. Yes, please. I've got my fingers crossed. I would just absolutely love to see it. Mick Schumacher and Ilott in Alfa Romeo, Mazepin and Schwartzman in the Haas at the end of the grid. But have I gone crazy? Is this absolutely mental? Or what ones of these transfers could you see happening? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. We are edging towards 3,000 subscribers, trying to get to 3,000 before the Belgian Grand Prix. So we've probably got like 7 days by the time this video comes out. Can we get there? Thank you so much for subscribing, liking, leave a comment. What do you think the grid is going to look like next year? And I will see you next time.